is called Sue, a dinosaur named Sue, the find of the century. 1999, copyright Field Museum of Chicago. It says from Scholastic, takes place in South Dakota. It says a strange day. There's a place in North America where rolling hills and tumbling cliffs cover the land. In the summer, temperatures soar to over 100 degrees. Dry, dusty winds blow. In this place, western South Dakota, Susan Hendrickson camped out with her dog, Gypsy. It was the summer of 1990. Susan had been living out of a tent for 6 weeks. Every day she worked outside in the blazing sun. Why would anyone choose to do that? Susan is a fossil hunter. South Dakota is one of the best places in the world to find fossils such as dinosaur bones. Okay, so let's go there and find dinosaur bones. And then Susan was with a group of fossil hunters from a company called the Black Hills Institute. The group had spent most of that summer digging up duck-billed dinosaurs called Edmontosaurus. Summer was almost over. Everyone was tired and they were ready to go home. With just 2 days left, the group woke up to a thick fog. They could hardly see. The air was cool and still. There's never fog in South Dakota in the summertime. It was such a strange day. This unusual day ended up being more amazing than anyone could have imagined. The discovery. It all began with a flat tire. The tire on the group's truck had to be fixed. There's no getting around this rugged area of South Dakota without good tires on your truck. Susan decided to stay behind while the others went to town to get a new tire. She was thinking about the cliffs across the valley. The group had carefully searched most of the area, but not all of it. There was one little piece I really wanted to go to. But there had been no time. We had been so busy. Susan remembers that this was her chance. Susan and Gypsy set off to a rocky area. They hiked 7 miles for more than 2 hours through the thick fog. By the time they got there, the fog had burnt away. Susan did what fossil hunters always do when searching cliffs. She walked down the bottom first. She looked for bones that might have fallen downhill. She watched for the dull brown color of fossil bones among the gray rocks. After 15 minutes, she hadn't found anything. Then Susan says, all of a sudden, I saw a couple of 2-inch pieces of bone and a bunch of little broken bone pieces. She looked up to see where the bone came from. 8 feet above, more bones jutted out of the cliff. Wow, it's pretty amazing. So Susan climbed up for a closer look. She saw 3 huge backbones and a rib bone and a leg bone. Because of the broken edges of the bones, they were sticking straight out of the cliff. Susan could tell there were more bones inside. I had never found more than small parts of T-Rex before, some teeth and a couple of small pieces of bone. So I was really excited, she recalled. Susan looked closely at the bones. They were hollow. Dinosaurs that ate meat, called carnivores, had hollow bones. Plant-eating dinosaurs, called herbivores, didn't. So this was a carnivore, and these bones were huge. I knew the only large carnivorous dinosaur that lived in that area was the Tyrannosaurus rex. So Susan and I thought, wow, at that time only parts of 11 other Tyrannosaurus rex skeletons had ever been found. Susan picked up 2 pieces of bone. She hurried back with Gypsy at her heels. She showed the others and told them what she had seen. They all agreed there was a T-Rex buried in those hills. They decided to name the dinosaur Sue in honor of its discoverer. Almost 30 feet of rock on top of the skeleton had to be cleared away before all of Sue's bones could be uncovered. But some of the people in the group had to go home. That left only 3 or 4 people to do this enormous job. Using shovels, picks, and crowbars, the group got to work. From dawn to dusk, 13 hours a day, they chipped and dug and broke away the cliff. They pushed 100-pound pieces of rock down the hill with their hands. The temperature rose above 120 degrees. The diggers were exhausted. But the excitement of what they hoped to find drove them on. Soon the jumble of Sue's bones was exposed. The group quickly realized how unbelievable this Tyrannosaurus rex was. Almost all of the bones were there. Most dinosaur skeletons that are found are missing many, if not most, of their bones. The creature's skull was the size of a refrigerator. Most of the teeth were set in its jaw, some 12 inches or longer from root to tooth tip. Its right front arm, it's about a foot, was there, one of only 2 T-Rex arms ever discovered. 35 tailbones circled around the remains. One of the most complete T-Rex tails ever found. Often, fossil bones are chipped or broken apart. Sue's bones were nearly perfect. To top it off, Sue was huge. It was really amazing, says Susan Hendrickson. She just kept getting better and better. We were all in such shock. You can't ever dream of finding something so good and so big. This was the find of a lifetime, the largest and most complete Tyrannosaurus rex ever discovered. Rib and foot bones, leg bones, the ribs and the feet, legs, tail vertebrae, skull, neck vertebrae. So it's kind of all wound up. The spine, the head, the ribs, and the feet and the legs. These are the legs, ribs and feet over here, the vertebra, the skull, the neck area. Neck vertebra. So T-Rex, what's the story? A man named Barnum Brown found the first Tyrannosaurus Rex fossils in 1900. He brought the bones to his boss, Henry Osborn of the American Museum of Natural History. When Mr. Osborn saw the huge jaws and dagger-like teeth, he knew this was one powerful dinosaur. He named the species Tyrannosaurus Rex, which meant Tyrant Lizard King. Over time, a tyrant is a mean, powerful leader. Tyrannosaurus Rex has taken on the nickname T-Rex. T-Rex stood about 40 feet high, or long, and 13 feet high at the hips. That's bigger than a city bus. Scientists think a T-Rex may have weighed anywhere from 2 to 7 tons. So that's Barnum Brown left over here, and Henry Osborn at a dig site in Wyoming, 1897. Its head alone might have weighed 1 ton, which is 2,000 pounds. About what a small rhinoceros weighs. T-Rex walked with its huge head forward. Its heavy tail held off the ground helped it keep its balance. The arms of T-Rex were only as long as an adult human arm, but they were very, very strong. The jaws of the T-Rex flashed as many as 58 teeth. It had the longest teeth of any known dinosaur. Up to 5 inches of tooth showed, from jaw to pointy tip, including the roots. Some teeth were longer than 12 inches. T-Rex's teeth fell out and new ones grew back throughout its life. Tyrannosaurus Rex is a species of North American dinosaur. As of 1998, 22 have been found, all in Canada or the western U.S. Sue has more of her bones preserved than any of the other T-Rex skeletons. The dinosaurs you see in museums have more bones made of plaster. Sometimes museums use parts of 2 or more T-Rex skeletons to make one whole skeleton. Sue is 90% complete. Most of the other T-Rex skeletons are less than half complete. Here's one way to understand. Imagine you have a 10-piece puzzle, but half the pieces are missing. 5 of them. Could you put the puzzle together? Could you tell what your finished puzzle would look like? Next, imagine you have 9 of 10 pieces. You could probably put the puzzle together, and you would have had a good idea of what the finished puzzle would look like. Now think of the puzzle pieces as dinosaur bones. With so many nearly perfect bones to study, scientists have the chance to learn more than ever about the species T-Rex. And they have a chance to learn something about the life of one T-Rex too. The life and times of Sue. Sue lived about 67 million years ago. This was near the end of a time called the Cretaceous period. The age of the dinosaurs was almost over. And what was life like for Sue?
If we could travel back in time, this is what we might see. Reptiles were everywhere, in the air. Pterosaurs, the size of small planes, soared. In the water, long-necked plesiosaurs and fish-like ichthyosaurs swam. Sue roamed the land with other kinds of dinosaurs, the three-horned triceratops, the duck-billed hadrosaurs, and such as the horn-crested Parasaurolophus. So it was quite an exciting time, I guess. Then, speedy meat-eating Toon and armor-covered ankylosaurs built like tanks. The ancestors of many animals alive today lived alongside Sue. Turtles, salamanders skittered in and out of the water. So jellyfish shared the seas with sharks and rays. Birds flew the skies, and on land beetles and opossums crept about. The weather was warmer then. In Sue's area, the air was humid, and winters were mild. Sue probably never saw snow or ice. Sun-warmed rivers and shallow seas covered much of the land. Sudden storms caused floods, sometimes burying dinosaurs under mud and sand. This is showing a classical interpretation of Tyrannosaurus rex and Triceratops on the left by Charles Knight, a painter in the 1920s. Very beautiful painting. So the world around Sue was lush and green. Ferns, palms, creeping vines covered the ground. Flowering plants bloomed all around. Smaller trees lived at the water's edge. Nearby great forests grew. Giant relatives of today's fir trees reached towards the sky. Based on what scientists know about the closest living relative of T-Rex, birds and reptiles, Sue probably hatched from an egg. Reptiles never stopped growing. Since T-Rex was a species of reptiles, Sue grew her whole life long. It is possible that Sue traveled alone in search of food. She might have followed bellowing herds of hadrosaurs. Or maybe she waited behind trees watching as thousands of triceratops trudged by. How did Sue catch and eat her meals? Most scientists think T-Rex is a fierce hunter. If that is the case, we can imagine something like this. A herd of triceratops marched by. Sue watched from a distance. An older triceratops, weak and sick, strays from the herd. Sue waits until the triceratops is well behind the others. Then Sue runs quickly from the bushes, catching the triceratops by surprise. Although the triceratops tries to run away Sue faster, she opens her mouth wide, her jaws clamp down on the back of the triceratops. She holds on tightly as the triceratops thrashes. The triceratops turns its head, its long horns pointing at Sue's ribs. Sue bites down again. This time she uses the hook-like claws on her arms to hold the triceratops still. Soon the triceratops is too weak to fight anymore, and Sue eats a very big dinner. Okay? Sounds like the Discovery Channel. Not everyone agrees that T-Rex was an active hunter. Some scientists think they ate animals that were already dead. These scientists think T-Rex was too big to run fast. Their arms were too short to grab anything, and using their mouths as weapons would have been clumsy. If that is the case, we might imagine Sue ate this way. A herd of triceratops stops to feed at the water's edge. An old Triceratops, too weak to keep up, lies down and dies. A couple of days later, Sue wanders nearby. She sniffs the air and recognizes the smell of a dead animal. She follows the smell until she finds the old Triceratops. Using her strong jaws and teeth, she tears chunks of flesh and bone from the body. The Troodon dashes over to share Sue's meal. Sue faces the smaller dinosaur, opens her mouth wide and roars. The Troodon runs away, frightened by Sue's size and teeth, and Sue finishes her meal. Okay? Very imaginative story going on. So, scientists have not decided which way T-Rex would have eaten. Maybe like today's lions and sharks, they hunted live animals and ate the meat of dead animals. Some scientists think this is the best explanation. So, no one knows how long a Tyrannosaurus Rex lived. Some scientists think they lived about 30 years. Others said they might have lived 60 or more. We don't know exactly how Sue was when she died, although she did live many years. And we don't know yet what caused her death. We do know what happened after she died. She became a fossil. In order for bones to become fossils, they must be buried quickly. Otherwise, hungry animals could carry them away, or weather and time could cause them to rot. We know Sue's body was buried quickly because so many of her bones were found together. And because Sue's bones were found in sandstone, we know she got covered by sand. Here's what might have happened to Sue. Maybe a sudden storm caused the flood. The floodwaters carried mud and sand, which buried Sue's body. Or maybe Sue died next to the river. Either way, her body was buried quickly. Her flesh rotted away, leaving her bones. Sand and mud from the flowing river covered the bones. Sue's bones got a little jumbled up along the way. Her skull came off her spine. Her leg, bones, and ribs were scattered nearby. And we know this because this was how her skeleton was found. Usually dinosaur fossils are much more jumbled and broken than Sue's. This is another sign that Sue's body was buried quickly. Sue's body was buried by layers of sandstone and mud, or sand and mud, and which collected and settled like sediment. Thousands of years passed. The weight of all that was on top of Sue, sealing her into the earth. The sand around her changed into the kind of rock called sandstone. Sue's bones changed too. The layers and layers of sediment pressing down them caused certain things to happen. Water seeped into the bones, forming new minerals. The bones became heavier, more brittle, and darker brown. Over millions of years, the earth changed. Forces inside the earth moved the land. Mountains formed with enormous earthquakes and volcanoes in the area. The rivers and seas covered Sue's homeland dried out. The weather cooled. Sudden rains caused floods. Strong winds blew. Rain and wind cut away the earth, forming hills and cliffs of modern-day South Dakota. Places that were once deep inside the earth were now near the surface. Sue's rocky resting place was one of those places. Finally, the rock around her wore away till a few of her bones showed. Along came Susan Hendrickson and Gypsy hunting for fossils. So, Sue gets carried away. The sandstone hill above Sue had been removed. Now it was time to take her bones out of the ground. 4 people from the Black Hills Institute started digging. Using small shovels, picks, brushes, they carefully dug around the bones, leaving the bones in blocks of stone where they could. Later, they would remove the stone with different tools. The block of rock that held that held Sue's skull and hip bones was taken all in one piece. It weighed 4 tons. Bones that looked like they might crack were coated with special glue. Then, each bone or groups of bones were covered with foil. The workers applied plaster casts to the bones. They wrapped it up and secured it right? Just like a doctor would put on a broken leg. The plaster cast would protect Sue during the trip to the lab. It took 4 trucks to hold all of Sue's plaster-covered parts. They were driven back to the Black Hills Institute. The process of cleaning and preparing each bone would begin. Sue's bones arrived safely. People were hard at work cleaning them when trouble started. Sue was so big and so fantastic that it seemed as if everyone wanted her. The landowner on whose land Sue was found claimed she was his because the landowner was part Native American. His tribe, the Sioux, said she was theirs. And the people from Black Hills Institute who found her thought Sue belonged to them. The dispute ended up going to court. When it was all over, 5 years later, a judge decided that Sue belonged to the landowner. The landowner decided to sell Sue. She would be sold at an auction. People gathered around, in an auction, auctioneers start bidding on the higher price. Person gets the object. So they put a display, her skull, in a fancy auction house in New York City. People from all over the world came to buy her. And then many places gave money to help the Field Museum buy Sue at the auction. McDonald's Corporation, Walt Disney World Resort, California State University System, etc. So they had the auction. Went up and up the price, over $1 million to $5 million. So the Field Museum in Chicago got it for $8 million. And they thought it was worth every penny. They would preserve the very special fossil for scientists to study. And people would be able to visit the museum to see Sue for years to come. The work continued. The Field Museum in Chicago became Sue's home, and they studied her bones, and they keep studying it in a lab, McDonald's Fossil Preparation Lab, and they prepare her bones, remove the rock covering the bones to study it and see the bones. They cut away the plaster cast first and remove the matrix, which is the non-fossil rock around the bones, and they work slowly and carefully not to damage any of the preserved parts. And they use a variety of tools to chip off the outer layer using a tool called Inscribe and like a mini jackhammer with a hard metal tip, pushing edges of air hammers. They chip away at the bone until a very thin layer of rock is left. Then they use gentler tools like a dentist, scrapers, probes, and picks, until all the matrix is removed by a tiny sandblaster. And they use baking soda to wear away the last rock over the bone. Using soft paintbrushes, they finish cleaning that. So her right arm is shown here. It says some of her bones were missing, but they create model bones or make cast copies of bones from other T-Rex skeletons to take the place. Their bones will be colored reddish-brown, so they will know which bones are real and which aren't. They put the bones together. A metal frame holds up the skeleton. It's heavy, so a metal frame, because Sue's skull is so heavy, it won't be mounted on her skeleton. A lighter cast of the skull will be made for that purpose. Her real skull will be placed on the balcony above, overlooking her bones. Eventually, a permanent exhibit hall for all of Sue's bones will be added to the museum. So they have learned important things, that she may have lived longer than any other T-Rex ever found. and her teeth are shaped strangely. She was a reptile, obviously, and her bones grew together, and that reptiles grow all their life. T-Rex brains, they learned about it, that they had a huge sense of smell to track meals, and it says some of Sue's bones look as though they may have been injured. How might this have happened? Once they put it together, they realized she was 40 feet long from nose to tail. They put the information in the computer to find out how is T-Rex related to birds. They are descendants, very closely related. And then that's it. So Sue waited 67 million years to stand up and look at lots of people and have them look at her. People are odd. Best thing Sue can do is to inspire people to go out and learn more. So thank you guys. My page is facebook.com Yosalplay, YOSALLPLAY. I'll see you all later. Bye. Go to the museum and look at the skeletons.